Good afternoon. My name is Juan Huerta. This is my video lecture for my mini project number 4. I will be defining psychology and also talking about what it is and how does it work. How does it work? And also I will also be talking about afferent neurons and efferent neurons, and also how are they similar, how are they different, and what they also mean as well. So psychology. And my participant today who will be, I guess, listening to my lecture is my sister. Say hello. Okay, so yeah, I'm gonna get started. And also, this is my note paper, or I guess, or helps me make sure I get to all my points and make sure I'm not missing anything or I forget to explain something. So this is what I'll be using. And so if I read from it, it's the information of what I've researched and studied. Okay, so. First off, psychology. What is psychology? Well, me personally, for a long time, I always thought psychology was just something that where scientists study, I guess, mental illness. I always had to do with, I guess, mental illness. I always thought it had to do with crazy people, like, yeah, just that. And I always assumed it had to be like in a clinical setting. I never knew that actually way more than that as I researched through this and took in this class. I've learned that psychology is not only clinical setting, but it also is in the education setting. It could also be in a family setting. So yeah, psychology is everywhere. It's not just in one place. And also psychology can be simple, and psychology can also be complicated. All right. So first of all, what is the official definition for psychology? Because psychology does actually have a lot of definitions, but the main definition of psychology is it's the scientific study of behavior and mental process. And in simpler terms, it's how a person thinks and reacts to a situation. And like I said earlier, it can be either a simple situation or it could be a complicated situation. Yeah. Now, if you notice in the definition I just said, if I can repeat it just to make sure we got it. Psychology is the scientific study of behavior and mental process. If you notice in this definition, there are 3 key terms that are really important, and those are science, behavior, and mental process. Okay, why am I mentioning this? Well, because, what are they, and what do they have to do with psychology? Well, they're actually the main foundations of psychology, and they are not only what makes psychology what it is, but they also are what scientists use to study it, research it, and will help scientists also understand when they're studying it. So, the first term, science. Well, we know that science is the study of something. So, in this case, the science of it would be the study of psychology. And when scientists study psychology, what they usually do is study human behavior and observe it, and then make conclusions. And now, when it comes to psychology, it doesn't always also have to be on humans. It can also be on animals. Like it also could be on animals, or I guess bugs, just like living things that have like a way of thinking. I'm not sure though if it's. I'm not sure if plants count in psychology. I don't think so because they don't really have a mind of their own. But I'm pretty sure it's more just like living things that have a mind and stuff like that. Yeah, I'm getting. I'm getting distracted. All right, so first, most times when scientists are studying psychology, they will have a goal in mind, and some of those goals could be to describe, to predict, explain, or to even there's more I'm missing. Predict, explain. Oh, and also to change or even control behavior. And a good example of this, well, a basic one would be a researcher trying to explain why a person made a certain decision and what led to that decision, like what factors play into it. And some factors could be like how this person grew up, or what happened in their life, or just how they feel. Like so many factors can play into it, and that's what science would be looking at, the factors and the final decision that's made. And a more specific example would be when a person is trying to lose weight, they will make the decision to exercise daily. And why I'm using that example is because if a scientist is trying to understand the psychology of a person making the decision to exercise daily and lose weight, they would ask first, okay, why are they making a decision and what led to that decision? Sorry. Okay, so first we could start with why they made a decision. Well, first of all, they would say, oh, because of their health, they just don't feel good, they always out of breath, and their cholesterol is high, things like that. And then what led to the decision is, well, because not only their health, but also they also are not feeling confident in themselves. They feel like since they've gained weight, they've also lost their confidence, and they want to feel confident again and just good about themselves. So that could be what led to the decision of them making to exercise daily. So yeah, that's a good example of like when scientists studying science of psychology. All right. Now that I talked about the first term, science, let's talk about the second term. And that second term is behavior. Now, behavior is everything a person does that can be directly observed. And basically, it's just like when a person can see how you're reacting, that's behavior. That's the simplest way I can put it. And a good example of this is when a person shows excitement and other people can see. And so let's say, for example, you're going with friends and you're doing activities, and one of them is going to a movie. Where you're all deciding to go to a movie. And you notice that one of your friends is actually way more excited than all the other of your friends because, well, let's say this movie we're going to watch actually has to do with a book he read and he knows how the story goes, so that gets him excited. And the fact that you can see how he's reacting, that's what a behavior is, just like how a person reacts to a situation. Okay. All right, now we got behavior. Let's talk about the third and final key term in the definition of psychology, and that is mental process. Now, mental process is our thoughts, feelings, and motives. And unlike behavior, the mental process is happening in our mind and cannot be directly seen. And so, like I said earlier, for a simpler definition of psychology, it's how we think and react to situations. And in this way, you could think that behavior is the reaction part and the mental process is the thinking part. So a good example for a mental process is just simple. When a person is thinking and trying to make a decision, it's what's going on in here. That's the mental process. And and once that, let's say the decision has been made in the mind, that's when the person reacts and behaves a certain way. And like I said earlier, the behaving is the reaction and the mental process is the thinking. And if you want another example for mental process, it could be also, like I said earlier, psychology could be simple or complicated. Mental process could also be a simple thing, like when you're choosing what to eat that day. You can decide that, I want fast food, and then, should I make homemade or should I make at home? What you're gonna think is, okay, what are the pros and cons of my decision? If I make food at home, I am going to, let's say, make a mess. That's the cons, make a mess, have to clean up afterwards. But the pros is I can make a healthy meal and I don't have to get out of the house, I can stay home. And like the pros and cons of fast food is I don't have to make a meal and I don't have to make a mess, but I have to drive all the way over there and I have to spending money on both could be a thing. But yeah, I'm getting distracted. But that's an example of mental processing. It's just the thinking part. And so yeah. So these three key terms, science, behavior, and mental process, they are the main foundations of psychology. So to remember, science is the study of something, so it would be the study of psychology. Behavior is the reaction part of the reaction, and the mental process is the thinking part. Okay, but why did I tell you this? Well, because not only are they foundation of psychology, but I think I'm repeating myself. They are what scientists and researchers use to study psychology, and also these foundations help them understand it a whole lot more. But just because those are the main foundations of psychology, psychology is also it's also so much more than that. You see, psychology is also an approach to life's biggest questions. It requires critical thinking. It tests assumptions by bringing scientific data, doing research, and drawing conclusions. Psychology is also a science that is practiced in several environments, like I said earlier, including clinical, educational, and family services. And I guess you could say the main goal of psychology is it addresses the positives and the negatives of human life, but at the end of the day, it addresses it because we want to understand our human behavior. So that's why I guess think is psychology. The best way to define it is it's the study of the human behavior, whether it's the positive or the negative, and its purpose is to not only improve people's lives, because that's where like the clinical and the mental part comes in, and it wants to improve. We want to use it to improve people's lives. Like some people could be in the best living conditions, but their way of thinking can really like mess a person up and can really just make them feel not so good every day. And so yeah, that's one of the main reasons psychology exists, to improve people's life. But it's also, like I said, psychology is so much more than that. It's also a way for us to not only learn not about ourselves but also about the world. It's also a way for us to also just in a way enjoy your life. We as human beings wanna learn things. And psychology is how we learn things, how we study, research, and find passions and things like that. So yeah, psychology is its foundations, but it's also so much more than that. Okay, now that let's see. Okay, now that I've defined psychology. Oh yeah, some quick facts about psychology, or just like some interesting things is psychology has not only been around for as long as we have been, but it's really began to take off when we as humans could start asking and thinking why and why is this and what is the reason for it. And for what I researched is it started back in ancient Greece. Well, not started, but it began to be big in ancient Greece in 4th and 15th centuries. And around that time was when a lot of philosophers, I think I'm pronouncing it wrong, but yeah, I should have wrote down some of their names, but a lot of them debated whether the mind and the body were a separate, I guess, thing, or they were together. Like if they were together, or they worked separately, they had their own functions, but they were apart and things like that. Like that's how long psychology has been. But yeah, now that we talked about psychology and I gave you a good like understanding of it, I hope so. Let's talk about afferent and efferent neurons. How I'm pronouncing that right? Well, first, before we want to talk about that, we need to first understand what are neurons. And let's see. And neurons are or nerves is another way to say it. Neurons are communicating cells that work in an informative processing network in the human nervous system. So they're basically like cells in our body, because I'm pretty sure you know what cells are. They're the cells in our body that I guess that carry information, and that's where we get in a way our knowledge. Either would be through our brain, body. That's where our knowledge is carried, and that's how we use it. The cells are like our knowledge basically. Okay. And like I said in the definition, it's a network in the human nervous system, and this is important because the nervous system is a big part in efferent neurons. The nervous system, for those who don't know, is the body's electrochemical communication circuitry. I think I'm saying that right. And this is basically where the neurons are working in our body. The nervous system, the nervous system has many characteristics that guide us by working with our brain to guide us in our interactions with the world by directing our behaviors. And so the nervous system is so big that it actually has characteristics of its own. These characteristics include complexity, integration, adaptability, and electrochemical transmissions. Now, why is it important that the nervous system has characteristics? Well, it's important because these characteristics are what makes the nervous system work and function. And so first, let's start with the first one. Complexity is how the cells work to allow someone to do so many things at once. And so the complexity part of the nervous system, it's like, I guess it's what our cells that help us do or understand complicated things. So for example, multitasking. A lot of people can multitask, and some are better, some are not, but most humans can multitask, and that's the part of our nervous system that allows us to do that by thinking and moving at the same time. That's how complexity works. When you're acting on those two actions, thinking and moving, that's complexity. Okay, the next one is integration. And integration is the characteristic of the brain that's able to gather information and process it. So like similar to like the mental processing part of the physiology, this is where also it comes to play. But this is like, that's where how do you say, this, I guess you could say this is a part of the mental process. That's where it comes from. I'm getting lost. Where is it at? I just had. Okay. Okay. So no, I'm lost. Sorry. Okay, yeah, here. Sorry. All right. So yeah, integration is the captures the brain that's able to get information and process it. Okay. Yeah, like I said, it's similar to the mental process where it's where we gather information and process it. It's like basically when you learn something new, and once you learn that, I guess it's how do you process it? What are you gonna do with the information? Are you gonna use it to improve yourself? Are you gonna use it to learn something? Or you're just gonna do nothing with it. That's up to you. But like also that's the part of your brain that works that you gather information, and then it's up to you. It's your brain's gonna process it, and it's gonna be like, okay, what am I gonna do with this information? So yeah, that's the integration part. Okay, now that we talk about integration, let's talk about another characteristic of the nervous system. The other one is adaptability, and this is a part of the nervous system that allows us to change. And what that means is our world is constantly changing, and we as human beings also need to evolve and change. And we have actually, like, we look back at how we were once at the beginning of time and how we are now. Not only are we different, but our world is different. So that part of our nervous system is what makes us or allows us to adapt and change constantly. That's another reason why we have so many different things compared to back then, and why why a lot of us as human beings are also different compared to back in the day. We are, in a way, like as human beings, we're evolving, but we're also changing in different ways. Okay, yeah, that's the adaptivity part. Sorry, adaptivity. And finally, the final characteristic of the nervous system is the electrochemical transmission. And what this is when the electrical impulses travel through the nerve cell and communicate with other neurons by using chemicals. And so basically, like I said, we have nerve cells, and this is basically where all the information we learn is processed and use in our body, literally our brain or like our brain or our muscles. Sorry, yeah. So it's where our cells are there information that is carried. It either goes how it works in our body. So it's either goes to our muscles, our brain, things like that. Okay, let's see. Yeah, like right now I can say it's in simple terms, it's how our brain works with our body, and the neurons are the signals our brain gets to make those decisions, or it's like the information. In a way, it's the information that is processed. And now that we know a little bit of what neurons are and how they work, what the nervous system. Sorry, turning too fast. What the nervous system is. How do they exactly neurons work? And I did mention this earlier. They give the brain signals that then receives input, which is the information given to the brain to direct the body's motor activities. The neurons are also where electrical impulses and chemical messages travel. When the when the electrical impulses travel to the end of the line, they communicate with the next neurons using the chemical messages. Now, now that to explain it more, the electrical impulse is what's powering the nerves to travel and process information, and the chemicals that are used, though the chemical messages is the information that is being given. So the electrical impulse is the power, and the chemical messages is the information that is given, that is taken to one place to another. So that can be either given to the or taken to the muscle or the brain, things like that. Okay, all right. Covered that up. Talking about that. Yeah, cover over the neurons. All right. Now we got the basics out of the way, what are afferent and efferent neurons? And well, first of all, the nervous system, like we talked about, has many specialized pathways that are made for different specific functions. These specialized pathways consist of afferent nerves or neurons, efferent nerves, and neural networks. Afferent and efferent nerves are connected where afferent nerves arrive or carry information to the brain and spinal cord. So basically, our brain and spinal cord receive information. The information that is received or given or that is arriving there, that is the afferent neurons. And a way to remember afferent neurons or what goes into our brain and spinal cord is afferent neurons starts with A, and A is also the word for arrive. So you could use that to remember that that's where information is given or arrived or into like the brain and spinal cord. So remember, it's the information that goes in the brain and spinal cord. Okay, now that we talked about afferent neurons, let's see. Yeah, so many notes. Yeah, okay. So they're also known, by the way, as a quick fact, afferent neurons are also known as sensory nerves. And what they do is communicate information to the brain, like I said, in spinal cord. They communicate information about the external information as well as information about the internal body process. And so, sorry, an example of this is when you walk into a kitchen and you see like a plate of food. First, your eyes will see it, but once your eyes see it, it will give that image of what you just saw to your brain, and that's when your brain processes it. And so, what happens there? That's the external part of the efferent neurons. They're processing what's going on outside. And so then that example, I go into the kitchen and I see a plate of food. And my eyes see the food and sends the image to my brain. And if it's a food that I like, my brain is gonna be like, oh, you like that, and it's like, oh, now I'm craving it. And once that happens, it's gonna send signals to your stomach, and you're gonna start getting hungry. Now, once it sends signals to the stomach, that's the internal body process. That's also part of what afferent neurons do. Yeah. And so yeah. Yeah, that's okay. So now that was an example of afferent neurons. Now of efferent neurons, I hope efferent remembers probably E, or motor nerves are as they're also called, are like similar to afferent nerves, but instead of carrying information into the brain and spinal cord, they carry information out of the brain and spinal cord. And usually there's information is carried out and either given to our muscles and our arms or legs. And then it's what I guess, because another word for the efferent nerves is also motor. Yeah, I think it's where's the other way of calling it? It's called motor nerves. And yeah, and this is basically the information that makes or tells our body to move. Like I said earlier, it's the information that's carried out, and the information that's carried out goes to the muscles or legs. And like right now, like yes, I'm moving, but my brain has to make a decision of like, okay, so you're gonna sending signals to my body. I make the decision, and once I make the decision, it's gonna send signals to my body that I'm to move my legs, my arms, things like that. So yeah, that's what efferent neurons are. Okay. Now, and finally, the third thing about the nervous system, if that's wrong, yeah, the nervous system that's important to afferent neurons is the neutral network. And what this is where all this information is processed, and also where the transmission of information is happening. And so yeah, this is basically where the afferent neurons and efferent neurons are working, where the information is traveling, where it's processed, where it's coming out of. That's basically what it is. It's like earlier when I explained that afferent and efferent neurons are like a two-way street, where it's like one road, but they're connected to one road, but they go different paths. So yeah, that's what basically the neutral network is. Okay, and so yeah, I've talked about afferent neurons and efferent neurons, and to sum it up, everything I just said is afferent neurons is where information arrives and is going into, and efferent neurons is where information exits and is carrying out commands to the body. And neutral networks are where information is stored and signals to the other nodes. So yeah, this has been my mini. First of all, thank you for participating, and I hope you learned something new. I know I did. So yes, thank you. And this has been my video lecture for my mini project number 4. I define psychology to my first citizen. I explain what it is, how it works, and other facts about it. And I also talked about afferent and efferent neurons and how they work. And I hope you as a student learn something interesting. And yeah, this is my video.